Hey, Jules Blessed Vegan, and as always, welcome to my story. And for my story, do you love that? It's my story. And that was so authentic, wasn't it? Welcome to my channel, and for those of you who are new, I hope you can benefit. And yeah, my channel is my story. Wow, that was interesting. Anyway, I do have a story that I wanted to share, and what it is that I used to weigh over 300 pounds, right? It was several years ago, but I weighed about 328 to 330 when I stopped weighing myself. And my mother at the time was like, you could still be beautiful. I mean, just because you weigh 330, you've always had such a pretty face. Why don't you just care for yourself, own how fat you are, accept that you're going to be buried in a piano? I'm not kidding you. My mother, who never gained more than 20 pounds in her whole life out of pure discipline, because some of her babies were 10 pounds. But anyway, I was just like, wow, when your mother's given up on you even, right? When you're talking about being buried in a piano because no coffin is big enough. Today, I assure you, society is more than accommodated because things are 5X if you need it, right? They used to have clothing made by Omar the tent maker. Now you can go into any store and get 3X, 4X, 5X, right? Order online, 7X. I don't know if that's a blessing. I mean, in a way, it allowed people not to hide anymore, but at the same time, it allowed them to get far too comfortable with obesity. But I was remembering, so what happened was I saw this teacher and she was like, wow, when did you get skinny? And I was like, wait, what? Because I am by no means skinny, right? I'm still in the high, who knows what, high 100 and something, and certainly the low 2s. I don't even know. But for her, who knew me several years ago at a different site, I have lost a tremendous amount of weight. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, okay, so when did, because every compulsive professional, I'll say professional food addict, knows every weight they ever weighed and the exact activities and places and events that they had to deal with that. And I was remembering when I was at a school site with her, I was shocked to even be hired. I could not believe it. I was like, is this principal sight impaired? Like, how did she even choose me? I weigh 303 pounds. And the thing was, the beauty of it was she wasn't sight impaired. She wasn't looking at my weight. She was seeing my true self, and she was stoked to get me. And that was just amazing to me, because that's like part of the struggle, is knowing that people can see you sometimes and not just the outer shell. And unfortunately, I spend far too much time focusing on that outer shell. So I had weighed about 303 pounds when I started that teaching job. And then at that time, I was in a size like 24 to 26. Actually, forgive me, 26 to 28 with my pant sizes. And then later, when I transferred to another school site, I had gotten down to about a size 20. And I was so proud, And then as I suggested, I lost and gained 100 pounds several times, at least 5 times that I'm aware of. But recently, in the last couple of years, right before I found anything to do with vegan, raw vegan, any other way of life than the standard American diet, I weighed about 279 to 282, and I knew that 300 was on the horizon and that I had to do something desperately to turn it around. I mean, the TMI is that I could barely even reach around my body to wipe myself properly. I was so huge. And I was just like, I can't believe I'm in this place again. And what am I going to do? It was insane. And I just knew I needed to drastically change something. So anyway, I, at that time, was about a 20 to 22. And I, was so uncomfortable in my body and so ashamed and didn't want to see anybody and was avoiding any events like the plague. I mean, people were, of course, still loving and so happy to see me and inviting me to everything. And I was just like, yeah, that's a no. I mean, I don't want people to see me like this, which is such a joke because you just really can't hide, Every time I thought I was hiding, I was heavier than ever. So that said, fast forward about 2 years, and I'm in a 14 and going down to 13 rather rapidly. So I do understand why that teacher was like, wow, when did you get skinny? But it was just so interesting because unfortunately, I've never, I'll say many times, have not been able to see myself beyond the size that I was wearing. Like that was just put on me from the littlest age, from being way too skinny as a small child, and my siblings saying that I had balls, is what they referred to him as, like a boy, because my pelvic bone was so pronounced, right? And they'd say, oh, you have balls. And it scared me to death. I thought I was going to be a boy. Today, changing into a boy is popular. Popular. Yeah, no. Anyway, it was terrible. And then later, I was considered chubby. And then later, like it was always something. It was so terrible. I'm so sorry for all of that. Anyway, though, the bottom line is it's very difficult to be compassionate and show kindness to others when you cannot even do that for yourself. So what this talk was I wanted to share is that I often do readings, just a daily self-help reading, and this one is called For Today by Overeaters Anonymous, and it's one of my favorites, and I just wanted to share a brief talk on that. So it always starts with a quote, and the quote reads, how shall we expect charity toward others when we are uncharitable to ourselves? How shall we expect charity toward others when we are uncharitable to ourselves? And that's by Sir Thomas Browne with an E on the end. And it reads, the injustice we do ourselves was aptly expressed by a member who said, if someone treated me the way I treat myself, I'd sue. That is brilliant and so apt, right? If someone treated me the way I treat myself, I'd sue. While it may be true that I tend to be harder on myself than I am on others, in a larger sense, if I do not feel kindly toward myself, I cannot extend kindness to others. And of course, some people would counter-argue that, and in fact, many times I would, in that I tend to be far more generous and kind to others. But is it authentic? And I think that's really, it almost should have said, if I do not feel kindly toward myself, I cannot authentically extend kindness to others, because I think it's often served with a side of resentment, to be fair. And then it goes on to say, I'm allowed to make mistakes, and so are other people. Errors can be pointed out and corrected without harsh measures or cruel words, without venomous self-recrimination. And I remember, like, nearly all my life, I would hurry up and put myself down before somebody else, hoping that I could, like, beat them to it, right? I was raised in a very critical, difficult household. Though there was tons of love and fun and everything else, there wasn't very much compassion. You were supposed to, there were things like my father would say, get your head out of your ass, or, was it get your head out of your ass? It was something lovely like that. Maybe it was get your finger out of your ass. And it was definitely use your head for something besides a doorstop, which was lovely. There were like a lot of things like that, but he came from the same hypercritical abuse that was put on us. And all of it was on the premise that we would strive harder if we were shamed or put down. I'm sorry for that, but it's still so typical today, right? People will threaten or shame us into thinking, well, if I tell them that, they're a total blow it, they'll turn it around. Really try praise and see how that goes. Anyway, use your head for something besides a doorstop. Get your finger out of your... I don't know. There was just lovely phrases like that all the time, and so many more than that. Oh my gosh. So when people were kind outside of my house, I didn't trust it because I couldn't understand it. I didn't understand, like, why? Don't you know that I'm good for nothing? That I have no worth? Why don't you know that? And if you don't know that, are you super stupid? Are you screwing with my head right now? Because why would you compliment me? My core family doesn't. My core family knows what an idiot I am, how stupid I am, how worthless I am. Why don't you know that? Are you stupider than they are? Because they know that. Why don't you know that? Are you tricking me right now? And I tell you, I have barely evolved above that. And it's been years and years of work, hard work, seriously. But that's what it's been. So I am allowed to make mistakes, and so are other people. Errors can be pointed out and corrected without harsh measures or cruel words, without venomous self-recrimination. I know it's true, but it's something I have to work on all the time. I go to criticism first, with myself for sure, and sometimes with my children, my students, I have to really hold my tongue. If I'm not saying it out loud, I'm thinking it in my head. What a stupid idiot. Like, can you believe? Like, that criticism, those verbal abuses are the first thing. You know, I work with people who are second language learners, like for years, right? And they have to process. They have to go through their first language and convert that into English, and then successfully pull off their tongue English. Well, I've joked on this channel that swearing was my first language, and I am telling you, I, like a second language learner, have to go through all the abusive rhetoric, all the desire to cuss first, before I get to the point of it hitting my tongue with kindness, with praise, with acceptance, with all those things. And I wish that weren't true, but it is true. And I'll just share that. I don't know if any of you can relate at all. You may not have come from that. I was remembering, I was literally like 22 years old, and I went to visit my grandmother. Drove all the way there, 100 miles, whatever. And she was insisting that I get on the scale. And I was like, I'm 22, Grandma. I know, just get on the scale. I just want to see what you weigh. I don't know how I got out of that conversation, but she didn't do it. But later, with my husband, and both of us were professional eaters, which got us through, because we'd both been from very abusive lives, from sexual abuse to physical abuse to mental abuse, to all of the abuses. We both came from that, and food was the fun thing we could do, for which he's still lamenting that I don't participate, and I get it. But she later decided we were her chubby kids. That's what she called us, as grown-ups. I was 30. My husband was 36. And she was like, I guess I'm just going to call you guys my chubby kids. Yeah. Did she love me? To no end. Was she supportive of me? Absolutely. But that was her deficit. Because like what she put on my father, like what my mother dealt with as a Hollywood child, those were their issues, which they absolutely pushed on to the next generation, which sadly I have seen in some of the grandchildren. Which, I mean, if there is no healing generation to generation, there has to be significant change or we're all screwed. So I'm really excited for this vegan movement right now, because it's affecting so many people exponentially. And it has a chance for people to choose wellness for the planet, to choose wellness for the animals, to choose wellness for the sake of wellness, and not necessarily all the game playing of weight loss. And I love that. It's so refreshing that some of the youngest people in our society that are just coming of age aren't thinking of it as a diet, aren't thinking of it as, the next best thing to get into their pants. They're literally thinking of it for survival of the planet. I can't. It sounds so incredible to me. It's not where I'm at, but I love the idea of it. I really do. So let's go back through. How shall we expect charity toward others when we are uncharitable to ourselves? I, by God's grace, and honestly, when I was 18, I begged God to give me the grace to be a person of compassion and to have a compassionate heart. And 99.9% of the time, that's who I am and who I present to the world. And that is all grace. But that 0.1% is my ugliest self. And it is very hard to navigate through that when it rears its ugly head. The injustice we do ourselves was aptly expressed by a member who said, if someone treated me the way I treat myself, I'd sue. While it may be true that I tend to be harder on myself than I am on others, in a larger sense, if I do not feel kindly toward myself, I cannot extend kindness to others. I am allowed to make mistakes, and so are other people. Errors can be pointed out and corrected without harsh measures or cruel words, without venomous self-recrimination. Just for today. And that quote was by Sir Thomas Browne. All right, my friends, that's heavy duty, and a lot of issues came up for me right there, but it's okay. That's why I have Jules Blessed Vegan, to remind myself that people are kind enough to call me Jules, that I am terrifically blessed to even have the grace I have thus far in my walk, and that I'm choosing to be vegan. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like if you like, join us if you haven't, subscribe. Know that I pray for you, and until we talk again, trust that you're blessed and that you are worthy of self-acceptance and kindness.